I'm going to put the oil drain plug in the bottom of the engine. I'm going to put the rear exhaust manifold on. Got a new crush gasket that'll just sit in there with it. Slide it on like that. Put the heat shield on there. And my nuts. Torque these nuts to 18 foot-pounds. Install the front exhaust manifold in the same fashion. I'm going to put my oil screen and drain plug back in the engine case. So first the oil screen slides in there, and then a washer followed by a spring, and then that all gets pushed in by this drain plug. And that plug gets torqued to 13 foot-pounds. Okay, I'm gonna put the carburetors on next. So to do that, I'm gonna put the rubber boot on the front, for the front carb on the engine, and then for the rear carb it'll go on the carburetor itself. And then when I go to put it in, I'll just kind of twist it into place. So there's a little projection on the rubber boot, and there's a bit of a hump on the casting, and if you line those two up, then the boot should be orientated properly for that front one. And then for the rear one, the projection's right there, and it should be about 15 millimeters from, I think, the center line of the carb over to this projection. Should be about 15 millimeters. Okay, I'm going to try and wrestle these carbs on here now. Took a bit of muscling, but I got those carbs to sit on there finally. Tighten down. The last thing I'm going to do before I put this bike, or this engine back on the bike, is put my coolant lines on the head. So new ring, O-ring place. Just get that down in there. I was asked to weigh this engine while it's out of the bike, give everyone an idea how much these things weigh. So I'm going to do that right now. Looks like it's 150 pounds. And that's dry with the carburetors installed. Alright, I'm gonna install my starter before I put this motor back in the bike as well. So got a new O-ring on here, it's oiled up, and I'll just slide that into its home. Now that I have the starter in there, I can tighten up these bolts, and this top one has this little clamp for the starter wire, and I just want to tighten that up with that at about a 45, just like that. Alright, so with a board underneath the engine and a floor jack underneath that, I was able to wiggle it into position, and I just threw in these back two motor mount bolts. Those are in there. Now I can put my subframe back on the bike and bolt together the front motor mount, and that should be pretty secure in there. Okay, I got my subframe bolted on now. The subframe bolts were torqued to 33 foot-pounds, so are the engine mount bolts. Those are all 33 foot-pounds. And then these brackets, these bolts were 17.5 foot-pounds. There and there. That's in there. I got my throttle cables routed to the carbs. So if I do that, I get that kind of action. And now I'm going to stick on my pod filters. Okay, I'm going to install the damper cam on this output shaft. I'm going to torque this to 87 foot-pounds. Alright, I'm going to stake the nut on this damper cam so it can't roll off this shaft. Just line a punch up. And bend that collar down into the keyed shaft. Next, I'm going to slide my clutch push rod in with a little bit of moly on each end. Okay, I'm going to put my final drive gear case in place. I have moly on the splines. I have my gasket in place with the two knock pins sitting there. There's a little rack for the rack and pinion that pushes the clutch push rod. It's seated in there, and I also have my damper cam and spring in there. So this is ready to get slid on. Okay, so I have the splines engaged. Should be able to slide this guy where it needs to go now. I managed to get that gear case seated on there. Now I'll just tighten up all these bolts. Alright, I think I have just about everything installed. My exhaust is just mocked up for the time being. I don't have the gaskets that go here, and I'm going to get an H pipe to remove the goat's belly, so when I fire that up, that's going to be a little bit loud because it's leaking there. I don't have my breather hooked up for my crankcase or carbs yet. I still need some fittings to finish that. This cover's still off until I do the timing. And I got the spark plugs out of both cylinders, a spark plug on each side, so that I can turn this engine over a couple times, get the oil to where it needs to be before I fire it up for the first time. Alright, I went to fill up the gas tank and my petcock started leaking, so I had to pull that off. And I think it's just a faulty diaphragm. This guy, I think I just need to replace that diaphragm, and that should fix that issue. But the good news is, because it was leaking, it should have put enough fuel in those carbs that I can fire it up. Alright, the spark plugs are in. Everything should be ready to go. This is the moment of truth. Maybe the carbs don't have fuel. Double check that. Round 2. Why would that have popped off? Alright, I got it to fire up there, but it spit this cover off. I noticed that this metal piece wasn't quite seated in there properly, so hoping that was the issue there. And spitting oil out of here pretty good, so I'll put this cover on for now and do the timing later, or show the timing light part later.